What do you think?
Charlie, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's why can't Mr. Hurd sit with me in London? It's really a sort of a
If I had invited you here last night, you would have been here.
Of course I would have. Let me say I was invited by a British Labour MP to go to England to talk about this peace process. The response of Douglas Hurd was to ban me from travelling to England. Now, it's really unique that I come here and in your studio that a British foreign minister talks to me through an edited record of a show last night. Why can't we sit down and talk about these matters? And also, I've spoken to the guy before. We sat across the table in Ballymurphy in West Belfast and discussed these matters.
Well, I remember when you won the broadcast last time, you asked me to please come to Ireland and get him to come to Ireland.
Yes,
we would do something there in the same context that we've done something. But why don't you just, I mean, not give them this rhetorical point about permanent and say...
Well, it's hard to understand, Charlie, because he said that we don't want them to use the word...
It's a little bit like you're not going to give it until they give something, you know.
No,
so
well,
there's a kind of Mexican standoff.
Well, not at all, you see,
or
because...
Irish standoff.
Well, not at all. It's a British standoff. You see, the Irish have moved. The IRA have called the complete cessation of its military operations. That man on that screen has 30,000 heavily armed combat troops in my country. In my country.
He would say that's because there were so many acts of terrorism trying to drive...
Well, let him say that to me, but even, you know, I'm not talking about what he would or would not say. He's well able to speak for himself, and let's not be too distracted here.
No.
Talking about...
But I should make this point. I mean, you have said, because I've followed this rather closely, you have said in public pronouncement that that the IRA is in favor of a permanent peace.
Absolutely.
You just have not said it officially to satisfy them.
Well, I think that man, and I watched his performance there, was, I mean, for a child to give excuses for not talking.
All right, well,
he's given excuses for not talking.
All right, watch this then. Another clip from last night with Douglas Hurd. We couldn't bring him at the same table, so we'll do it this way again. Here it is, the Foreign Secretary last night.
What's non-negotiable is the principle of consent. Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom because that's what most people in Northern Ireland want. What Gerry Adams and some others say is, regardless of what people want, this should be a united Ireland. Just as others might say, is regardless of what people want, there has to be the status quo. We say, you know, it is for the people there to decide. At the moment it's very clear, and I think likely to remain so for a long time, that most people there want to belong to the United Kingdom. But this is the principle of consent in action, and that's not negotiable.
And Gerry Adams wants all the people of Ireland to vote on that.
What the Irish government said and the British government says is, let it be on the principle of consent, taken separately in each part of Ireland, so that the North can't be coerced into unity if that's not what most people in the North want.
Can you imagine?
That's realism too.
Can you imagine circumstances in which the people of Northern Ireland will like to take leave of the United Kingdom?
I think I don't see the circumstances now. I think it's very unlikely. But that's not for me to decide, it's for them.
What's going to happen, despite the reluctance and the hesitancy of the British government, is that the Irish people are going to have peace.
But what do you say to his point about, I said, what's non-negotiable, and he said the idea of consent.
Well,
that the people in Northern Ireland have to consent,
everything,
not to be part.
Everything, Charlie, should be negotiable. Everything should go on the table and should be discussed out. Everything should be a matter to seek agreement upon. And of course we will have to measure how we get that agreement. And of course we cannot build a united Ireland without the assent and the consent of all sections of our people. And let me say this, Douglas Hurd has no right to dictate to any section of the Irish people how we should live. But the Unionists are my people. They're not his people.
Your people because?
Because they live on the island of Ireland. They're Irish people.
But they would say we want to be part of the British Empire.
Well, let's sit down. The British don't have an empire. Mr. Hurd must have done a good slush job. Yeah. The British don't have an empire, and that's probably what's wrong with them, that some of them imagine in their heads that they still have. But the point I'm making is that Ireland without the Unionists, Ireland without the Protestants, is not the type of Ireland that I would want. I haven't struggled, and those who struggle with me have not struggled for some sort of exclusive marginalised section of our people. We want all of our people.
What do those people in Northern Ireland have to say? What right do you give them to speak to their own future?
Talk, sit down, discuss it out.
But the end has to be that they give up their relationship. They give up their relationship with Britain and become part of Ireland. That's what the end has to be.
Well, they are part of Ireland, but that's what I want to convince them of. That's what I want.
You want to convince them that they are wrong and they're thinking that they should maintain their allegiance to Britain.
Well, they, you see, and this is an important thing, and bring a unionist on here and talk about this, because the unionists feel betrayed by Douglas Hurd, because Douglas Hurd doesn't represent our interests, and they know that, because they were left. They were left to marginalise us, to discriminate against us, to repress us, and to carry it for Britain. And now they're carrying the con. And they don't like it. And they know the British are going to dump them. And what we want to do is to embrace them as part of a new Ireland and a great Ireland. And that isn't just Sinn Féin's view, that's the Dublin government's view also.
All right. Tell me about the meeting with Rosa Parks.
Well, when I was...
Gee, this is one of the great civil rights figures in American history. She refused to sit on the back of the bus and had a significant thing to do in Montgomery with the development of the civil rights
when Rosa Parks did that
movement.
I was about 9-year-old, and some 7 years later I became part of a fledgling civil rights movement back in Ireland. And the 60s, for those of us old enough to remember it, was a decade of great promise, of the Beatles and Bob Dylan, of the American civil rights movement, of students' movement throughout Europe. Yeah. We went out to look for votes. And I was innocently naive. I thought, like a whole lot of other people, if you asked for the right to vote, it would be given to it. Now, here in the States, Rosa Parks gave us an example. She refused to sit on the back of the bus. She developed as a symbol and as an active participant in civil disobedience, squats, sit-ins. And I went through all of that in squats and sit-ins and civil disobedience back home in Ireland. We stole the song, "We Shall Overcome." We stole the song, "We Shall Not Be Moved." And I never believed that it would be my honour to come and meet Rosa Parks. And when I had the opportunity to go, I brought from Ireland Waterford Crystal. And on behalf of women in Ireland, women like Murray Drum, killed in this struggle, like young Sheena Campbell, killed in this struggle, like Teresa Clinton or Maria Farrell, it was my pleasure and humble honour to give to Rosa Parks on behalf of Irish people.
You know,
that small gift.
You have heard this point made before, that there's such a dramatic difference in what Rosa Parks did in terms of the civil rights movement and nonviolent protest and what the IRA has been about, that to make that association, in a sense, is to assume a mantle of nonviolence and to verbalize a disservice to her principles and the principles of Martin Luther King.
Charlie, what you're doing there is patronising Rosa Parks, because Rosa Parks knows where I'm coming from. Rosa Parks knows my background. Rosa Parks was pleased to come and receive that small token. Now, the difference is, and she also said that the struggle goes on here for civil rights and for prosperity, is that it was a domestic issue. Your government responded to it. How adequately or not is a matter for people here to judge. In the British case, it was not a domestic issue. It was them as an outside force denying us our civil rights, and they militarised the situation. They give us heavily armed troops, they give us the prison ships, they give us all of the paraphernalia of war, and none of the substance of civil reform. And that's the difference in the two situations. And I'm proud and pleased that Rosa Parks was prepared to accept that gift from me on behalf of people in struggle back in Ireland, because she gave us an example in the 1960s, and it's also pertinent. It was a good marking of this new era, that a heroine of the struggle in the USA would be part, symbolically, of the new era back in Ireland.
And make one last point. I've got 30 seconds. What's next, and what has to happen to make this take the next step?
The discussion we're having now, Charlie, the discussion we're having now, with both governments and all the other parties around the table, shaping out our future so that no one else has to die in Ireland, and so that the Irish people can have our freedom and justice and a lasting and a permanent peace.
And if you said this announcement is for a complete and permanent cessation, and you thought that would advance the cause of peace, would you say it?
Of course.
Why don't you say it then?
Because I don't believe the British government are serious about semantics. I want them to be serious, and I want them to be serious about bringing peace. Let's not look back. Let's look forward to a new and an agreed and a peaceful and a just Ireland.
As it was last time, this time I'm pleased that you came here and we could talk about what is an interesting and a very positive development in Ireland. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerry.